I'm recording my homily for the 20th Sunday in Ordinary Time in 2018. I'm going to be on vacation for the next 2 weeks, so we'll see how my homilies work out for that time period. But I'm spending one day down here at the Palisades Retreat House in Federal Way. It's a Catholic retreat house. It is a beautiful setting. So just recording my homily down here. So this last week on Friday, we had a funeral, and it was a beautiful funeral. I mean, every funeral is sad, obviously, and this one was too. But it was a very beautiful funeral because in the funeral, I felt like there was two things that just really were apparent. One was just the love of what I felt was a just really healthy family. Just all the families that came for the funeral, just the love that was between all of them, and the family, these young families, and they were so connected, and so it's just beautiful to see that connectedness. It's something I think that every pastor, every priest desires in his parish, is to be able to accomplish that, is to build a community that's so close that you could say, okay, this is like a family. This is a family, okay? But in the context of this particular family and their friends and their family, it was beautiful to see that. So the second thing that was really beautiful was just how many of the people were really, really in love with their faith. I mean, they took their faith very seriously. And so you could see that there had been, within the context of all these friends and family, just a really concerted desire, effort, whatever you want to call it, where they were all practicing their faith. They were in love with Jesus. They were in love with the Catholic Church. And again, as a pastor, you say, okay, that's what I desire for the parish. I think that's what we all desire for our parishes. So that was beautiful. Now, in my homily at that particular Mass, I used an example to try to draw some of that out. And so the example I did was this. So you have to pretend for a minute, okay? So pretend someone in your family comes up to you and they say, I'm going to walk to Alaska. So they come up to you and they say, I'm going to walk to Alaska, right? And you say, oh, okay. I think we all have someone in our family who's a little crazy like that, right? That's probably me and my family. They say, I'm going to walk to Alaska. So as I was thinking about this, I went on Google Maps and I looked. And so I think the nearest town that you can walk to in Alaska, where you don't have to take a boat, is Skagway, okay? Skagway is 1,570 miles. It's actually shorter than I thought it was, but that's about how far it is. Okay, so remember that, 1,570 miles, 1,570 miles. So this person says, I'm going to walk to Alaska. You say, okay, fine, do whatever you want. That's great. But then they come back to you and they say, but I'm only going to walk 1 mile a day. I'm only going to walk 1 mile a day, and I'm going to walk to Alaska. So you're like, let's do the math here. How long will that take? Well, 1,500 days, that's about 5 years. It'll take them about 5 years, plus or minus a couple months. That's quite an obligation. That's a chunk of time, right? And so you're probably thinking at this point, I don't know if they actually belong in a mental hospital or if they should be actually walking to Alaska. But anyways, so you say, okay, knock yourself out, fine. But then they come back to you and they say, I want you to go with me. I want you to go with me. And not only that, if you're getting all sentimental and thinking, hey, yeah, the two of us will go, this family member is inviting everybody. I mean, everybody. They see strangers, friends, family. They say, okay, this is the day we're going to leave. Anybody's welcome to come. We're going to walk to Alaska, and we're going to walk 1 mile a day. And I'd love to have you come with me. Now, I know it all sounds crazy, right? I mean, I don't know anybody who would ever do that. But think about Jesus. So he comes here to earth, right? And he doesn't come to just whisk us away, or, sometimes people talk about the rapture or things like that. He doesn't come to do that. He came here to walk with us 1 mile a day. Now, obviously, I'm talking like spiritually, right? 1 mile a day, Every day's a little different. Every day there's something new, right? We know that in our lives. Every day there's something new. Some days are really difficult, and you say, well, why 1 mile a day? I can walk 10 miles a day, or I can walk 15 miles a day. You say, but not carrying a cross, you can't. And that's part of life, right? So you think of Jesus, you say, Jesus, when you see Jesus up on the cross, you say, okay, now I understand 1 mile a day. I mean, we pace ourselves. Now, where are we going with Jesus 1 mile a day? We're going to heaven. All right, that's the plan. That's the idea. And so he wants to walk with us 1 mile a day to heaven. Every day we walk a little ways. And he invites everybody. He goes out and invites everybody. Strangers, friends, family. He just invites everybody. Now, that doesn't sound so crazy, does it? Because that's what we've been baptized into. That's our family. So baptism, we've entered into a family. And so that's what we do. We journey 1 mile a day on the journey to heaven. That's where we're going, right? And we're not doing it alone, right? We're not just buddies with Jesus. It's just me and him. We're doing it as a family. It's beautiful when you think about it. Maybe we haven't thought about it quite in this way. But every day, 1 mile a day, we journey with Jesus. And we're on our path to heaven. Now, I bring this up for a couple of reasons. So one is the nature of the parish, the nature of our Catholic Church as a family. Jesus Christ did not come to save us in isolation of each other. He created a family. Look at how he worked with the apostles and the disciples. He created a nucleus, a family, and then he wanted that family to keep growing, right? And so in the context of that, we remember that we as a church, the Catholic Church, we are a family. Now, for some reason in the past when I would try to promote that idea, it seems like I would get resistance to it, and I don't completely understand that. Maybe negative experiences of family, I'm not sure. But I remember one time I wanted to put it in the mission statement of the parish, and it seemed like I was the only one who wanted that word in there, family. That other people said, no, parish is not really a family, And maybe it's because we've made the parish too much like a business, like an institution, like a club, or I don't know, but just to claim the beauty of what family is meant to be. Now, there's a couple things about family that are really important. For example, I have people who come up to me and tell me when they're really, really going through hard times, they say, you know what, Father, you really learn who your friends are when you're going through hard times, because they're the ones who don't abandon you. They don't leave you just because you're going through hard times. And I'd say that's like family, right? That's like family. So Jesus is in the gospel this weekend. So we're getting close to finishing the Bread of Life discourse. We have one more week in the Gospel of John where he's talking about him giving his flesh and blood for us, right? Well, today in the gospel, he's saying that. He's saying, I came to give my flesh and blood for you. And so anyone who eats my body and drinks my blood has life. That's family language, if you really think about it, right? Somebody in our family is a little crazy, or they're doing something that we don't necessarily agree with, and you're talking about it with somebody else, and you say, you know what, but the reality is they're flesh and blood. They're my family. I can't just leave them. I can't abandon them. There's a connection there that we didn't ask for per se. We didn't choose it. We're family, and it's flesh and blood. In other words, we can't tear it apart. We're in a sense, we're one body, right? And so Jesus comes and he uses that language. So when he begins to talk about the Eucharist, he's creating a family, and he's saying, I'm giving my flesh and blood because you are my flesh and blood. You're my body, right? He uses that language, the body of Christ, right? But he's giving his self to us. as his flesh and blood. Why? Because he doesn't love us? No, because he loves us, right? Now, when you see Jesus up on the cross, he didn't come to us because we were perfect. He didn't choose us because we were perfect. It's kind of like a family. You don't choose your family members. Now, I guess in some ways we kind of choose our friends, right? But also, if you really think about it, if we're really being Christian, we don't even do that. We kind of open to how the Holy Spirit works in our relationships. But when he looks upon us from the cross, he loves us, not necessarily because we're at a place of being perfect, but because he wants to journey with us as a family, 1 mile at a time. Now, I also bring this up because of the things that are happening in the Catholic Church right now. So what are some things happening in the Catholic Church? Well, if you watch the news, it's just the ongoing scandal, right? The ongoing scandal of just the scandal of the priests, but now it's changing a little bit. And so what you have in the news is, yes, you have the stories that came out about Pennsylvania, but the new twist, that's a wrong word to use, but the new component to this scandal, as horrible as it is, and as horrible as it been, and just as gut-wrenching as it is as a priest to see your family suffer so much, to see people lose faith in God, to lose faith in the church. The new component to this is that it seems as though that the people, the bishops, the shepherds who were responsible for protecting the children, for protecting families, but chose instead just to move these priests around and not to remove them from ministry, but just move them around. They're starting to be held accountable. And that's important. And I'm not saying that out of like wrath towards these bishops. I'm not saying that we should form some kind of lynch mob or anything like that. But accountability is important, right? You notice in a family, when family has secrets, when there's some dark secret in a family, there's a temptation to keep it there. There's a temptation to just lift up the rug and sweep it under the carpet, right? And put it back down. But it's like cancer. It doesn't go away. If anything, it just festers and makes things worse. And then 30 years later, finally somebody says, we got to deal with this as a family. And so when there's sexual abuse in the family, or there was other kinds of abuse, there needs to be accountability. And so when we look at our own lives, when we look at when we were younger, we look at maybe the mistakes we made and we say, I need to be accountable. So last week I talked about spiritual maturity. This is maturity. It's holding ourselves accountable for our actions. Especially when people call us out on it. Especially when we know there's damage that's been done. We hold ourselves accountable. And so as a church, we have the right and we have the obligation to hold each other accountable, just like in a family. If a parent knew that there was someone doing something horrible to one of their children, and then they just swept it under the carpet, we say, that's not being a very good parent. Especially if they didn't do anything. But even if they did, just to keep it a secret, because then that child has to bear that secret alone. They have to walk that 1 mile a day alone. And that's not right. It's not what a family does. And so even at the risk, if you will, of the family, we hold each other accountable. Again, why do we do this? We do it out of love, right? Accountability is never out of fear. Accountability is out of love. And so when somebody's been hurt and they choose to speak out, to hold the person accountable, you can say, okay, they could be angry, but deep down, they're not going to do it because of the anger. They're going to do it, one, because there's a necessity, there's a need for harmony that's been broken, harmony that's been lost, peace has been lost, justice has been broken. And so I say accountability is very important. It's not a bad thing. Now, it's a little scary to think about that, because if you really look at some of the details behind the sex abuse allegations and the stories that are happening, there's a lot of shepherds that have not been held accountable. And I would dare to say they're in almost every single diocese, because we've gone through a time where there was a lot of things going on that were just swept under the carpet. I think a lot of it's come out in terms of the lawsuits and the payments and that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people have not been held accountable for moving priests around, for not protecting children. Now again, I know as a priest, the temptation when we see these things in the news is to say, man, I wish it would just go away. I wish it would just go away. But to cure ourselves of that thought, all we have to do is talk to one victim. Just talk to one victim. Ask them to share their story. Share what they went through. And then we realize just hoping it goes away that's not what we do as a family. We desire is healing. We need healing. Okay? And so accountability, I truly believe, is a component to that. It hurts, when you think of when somebody comes to you and says, that you hurt them, it hurts you, especially if you didn't even realize you're really doing it. But then to say, okay, because of spiritual maturity, my desire for healing, my desire to create a healthy family, I have to do it. Okay, so never feel guilty about desiring accountability within the context of the church. I know we love our bishops, we love our priests, and we put them on pedestals too much, but we put them on pedestals. We see them as being Jesus Christ, and hopefully in a healthy way that can be true in a spiritual way. But when somebody breaks, when somebody destroys the community, when somebody does really, really horrible things, we should expect accountability. If somebody comes to you during this mess and during this time and says, how can you be Catholic? How can you be Catholic? Why would you be Catholic when all this is going on, when they're doing these horrible things? And why would you be Catholic? Now, a person can come to you for all different kinds of reasons to say that. They probably have some kind of an axe to grind against the church already. Maybe they don't like the church already. And so they're just using it as an excuse to throw that negativity out at you. But so how do we respond to that, right? Because the temptation is to feel shame and to just want to slink away, just say, maybe I shouldn't be Catholic. Maybe I should just be a Catholic, but just be really low-key, just fly under the radar, and, never wear a cross, never do anything people would know, especially during this difficult time. That's the temptation. So I want to give a couple thoughts on how to respond with things going on in our world right now, all right? Somebody comes to you and just expresses all this negativity. One of the things you could say, you say, so you're not Catholic, right? And so let's say they're not Catholic. Say, no, I'm not Catholic. And you say, but you're really hurt by what's happening, right? I mean, it bothers you, right? And it's like, yeah. You say, well, imagine then how I feel. Because I love my Catholic faith. I love my church. I mean, I love it. They're my family. So imagine how I feel, right? So, as good friends, what good friends do when somebody's really hurting is they don't come out and just blast them and nuke them, and, but they say, I wonder where the path of healing is in this, right? I wonder how I can support this person. Okay, so is to be able to put it in perspective and say, I love my family. I mean, this is my family. This is why I'm hurting. If I didn't love my Catholic faith, I wouldn't care. But I love my Catholic faith. I love my family. I love my people. And so this really, really hurts. And so I think the first thing is to be able to say that to people in all humility, to say, man, this hurts really bad. Okay? The second thing to be able to say, I think, to people is to say, yes, we need to be held accountable. Yes, this is horrible. Not to dismiss it, not to downplay it, not to excuse it, not to say, well, there's other organizations that have the same problem, That's true, but that doesn't necessarily need to be said right now. What needs to be said is, yes, we need accountability. Let's find a path for it, okay? Let's find a path for accountability. And so really to take the path of humility on this one. And, a person says, well, I didn't do it. It's not my deal. It's not my problem. Look at the cross. Look at the cross. It wasn't Jesus' fault, but he looks at us, right? He looks at us. He saw our sins, and he got up there. He walks 1 mile a day with us. He carries that cross, okay? He carries it with us. So to say it's not my deal is it doesn't work here, because we're a family, that's why, right? We're flesh and blood. And we're the flesh and blood that Jesus Christ has given to us, that we receive every single Sunday. That's the flesh and blood that we have that binds us, okay? The other thing I think we can say, and I think for me this is the really powerful thing, is this when you're talking to someone and they're mad to say, and they're like kind of lumping everything together. They're like saying the Catholic Church is bad. You say, whoa, wait a minute. Let's look at our beliefs. Let's look at the gospel. Everything was betrayed in these actions. Everything that we believe and hold dear was betrayed. This is not because people were faithful to the faith. This is because of corruption. This is because there was betrayal. On every possible level, every commandment, everything we hold dear was betrayed. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about duplicity, right? That's where a person's living a double life. This is the most extreme example of duplicity. This is all horrible. Whether we're talking about the one who was responsible, who moved the priests around and did it secretly because they were a coward, because they were afraid to deal with the situation, whatever the reasons were. How they deal with the lawsuits, the greed behind it, right? Filing for bankruptcy to protect the diocese rather than dealing with it, right? It was all fear that this was not love. It was betrayal. And so I think to be able to call that out and say, as a family, we've been betrayed. And we have the right to root out that. Now the last thing, which I'm ashamed to say I didn't even say in my homily. Our first response or our second response, wherever, when the time is right, we bring this to Jesus, right? We bring it to prayer. We allow this to be part of our 1 mile a day. And we don't try to solve it all in one day, but we try to we say, okay, I got to walk with this. I am Catholic. That is not going to change. I love my family. I love my family of faith. I love Jesus Christ. And so I'm going to walk with this one. With my brothers and sisters, we're going to walk. Okay? That fear, that desire to live in secret or to distance myself from my family, no, we don't do that, right? Or we try to resist that. Now I have to say, in the midst of all of this as a priest, I really do feel like I have more appreciation for family members who have someone in their family who's done something really horrible and the whole community knows about it because it was in the news, maybe it was even nationally known, and they did something really horrible, and now they're feeling shame because they're a family member of this person. I understand that. I understand that feeling of shame. But at the same time, let's confront the truths that are there, right? Let's approach it in humility. Let's approach it with love and not with fear. Let's not sweep it under the carpet. Let's hold people accountable. And let's also remind ourselves that what we believe is good and is holy and is beautiful. And in these horrible circumstances, everything that we believe was betrayed. And so we walk 1 mile a day. We carry the cross. All right? All right, you guys everybody have a blessed week. And I have no idea where I'm going to record my next homily. But I'll see you then, okay? God bless.